Hey everyone, this is Kit Cabello with Hard Lens Media. Welcome to another episode. I'm joined here today with Paul DuPont, Daniel Lupker. We got a great epic show for all of you, and I'm just really excited just how things are going to turn out. This show is just jam-packed with a lot of stuff. So, with that being said, I wanted to at least let you guys know some breaking news. Daniel, Paul, I'm very sorry, but two heavy hitters are gone. Steve Bullock and John Csec are officially out of the Democratic primary race. And, you know, I know, Paul, you were a big fan of both of them. Their ideas were, like, really incredible.
Right.
I mean, who were these guys? I mean, they fell off the radar after the first debate. I mean, come on.
They will be sorely missed by the 8 people who remember their names.
Well, you know what? Since they're gone, I think they deserve something special. Here's a dancing Godzilla for you. There you go. There,
Godspeed.
All right. So, anyways.
Bullock actually was on the stage in the first debate.
Yes. And
Did he make the second debate? I think it was only the first debate.
First debate, and he was talking about increased use of basically more nuclear firepower.
And that other guy is human.
Yeah. Well, anyways, he's gone now. But let's start focusing on the first story. So, everyone, we're about to buying it up, folks.
I'm gonna biden it up.
Oh, really? How are we gonna buy it up this time?
We need more. We need more gifts. Paul.
We need more.
We'll just
we
do
can
that.
get more
All
guy
right.
Biden
Well, there
gifts.
we go. So, why are we about
an
to?
oldie but a
Isn't there
goodie.
like a video that just came out of him sucking his wife's fingers on stage?
I actually
Yeah.
have that
So
photo.
let's use
I have
that.
that photo. I'll send it to you.
It's a
Send it to
photo.
Paul,
Is
yes.
there a video of it?
I'm
There's a video.
There's video. It was a big rally.
There probably is video of it, but anyways. But why are we about to buying it up, folks? Well, here, you're about to find this out. In 10 weeks' time, Joe Biden will lay Joe's vision for America. I don't even want to imagine that. But this has to deal with him addressing something that's impacting a lot of people here in the United States, and that is the student debt crisis. Among his promises, he's saying that he's going to fix the student loan crisis, saddling 45 million Americans with crippling debt, right now reaching a staggering $1.5 trillion. But it's important to note that Joe Biden actually kind of helped cause this problem in the first place. So private student loans were largely stripped of bankruptcy protections in 2005 in a congressional move that had a devastating impact of tripling such debt over a decade and locking in millions of Americans to years of grueling repayments. So what does this mean? Well, this means that, you know, when someone co-signs, you know, for a student loan, or when someone takes a student loan, they're stuck paying that bill. And it's unforgivable. Like you're stuck with it until the day you die. And let's say you die and someone co-signed it, they inherit that debt. Student debt has no forgiveness. You're stuck with it. That's why there are so many millions of Americans that are reaching, you know, the hardest points of their lives because this debt is just settling them down and stopping them from reaching opportunities. Now, this was a Republican-led bill that tightened the bankruptcy code, unleashing a huge giveaway to lenders at the expense of indebted student borrowers. Now, there was an opposition in 2005 from 25 Democrats in the United States Senate, but it passed anyway, with 18 Democratic senators breaking ranks and casting their vote in favor of the bill. Of those 18, one politician stood out as especially a heavy champion for this bill, and the credit companies, too, as it happens, had given him hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions. Now, Paul, Daniel, you guys really need to answer in this. Who do you think we're talking about? There was somebody who was a United States Senator in 2005. He's running in this race.
It sounds like Mo Biden. I think I might have the name right. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, well,
I just remember that he was some guy that put the laws in place that are screwing students over, only to tell students about a decade or two later that he has no remorse and no, what was the word he used? I can't remember.
Empathy.
Empathy.
Yeah,
no
for
empathy.
Them, no empathy
Yeah.
for them. I can't. Paul, maybe you could tell us who it is.
Yeah, Biden.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, right. That
Hence
guy.
the phrase, time to biden it up. So again, so this is a crisis now that's impacting more than 1 in 3 young adults in the grip of, as well as 3 million Americans beyond the age of 60 still laboring to honor college loans that they took out decades ago. More than 1 million people default on their student loans every year. By 2023, a proportion of borrowers falling behind with repayments is expected to reach 40%, puncturing a massive hole in the system. So this goes on to further basically state that here's what somebody from Biden's campaign went to say when he was trying to justify his backing of that 2005 act. knowing that the bill was likely to make it through the Republican-led Congress, but he, being Biden, worked to moderate the bankruptcy bill and protect middle-class families. He believed, Biden, that if you have income and consumer debts you can pay, you should agree to a repayment plan that you can afford. Well, first off, Biden, go fuck you, and also, more importantly, fuck your representative for saying something that's clearly out of touch. Millions of Americans are in debt because of this bill that you backed in 2005. You made them victims, all in favor of supporting the loan and credit card industry. Way to go, Biden. Brilliant move. And somehow you're the front runner. So, again, Biden was, again, a huge avid supporter of this bill as a whole and of its overall thrust of tightening up the bankruptcy code, largely to the benefit of the lenders at the expense of distressed families who would find it harder and harder to file for bankruptcy. So when asked to reach out for a comment, the Biden campaign has yet to make a statement. So, guys, I want to open this floor up and get your thoughts on this.
Well, I mean, I don't expect Joe to advocate for a different position here. I mean, he didn't take the tack that Pete Buttigieg is taking, which is, oh, well, if we're going to give people free stuff, we want to make sure we don't want to give wealthy people free stuff, which is like, would you stop it, dude? Like, the wealthy are allowed to use the interstate highways. Like, we don't begrudge them that, right? When a thing that is universally available for everyone necessarily will include the wealthy. That's kind of a bad argument. So at least he's not going that route. But he's just being obstinate. I think it's showing his miscalculation in terms of he just doesn't understand the political era that he's in. To say, oh, it's a personal responsibility issue, and these folks should have only taken out a loan that they knew they'd be able to repay. And it's like, I'm sorry, you're asking very young adults, right, 18-year-olds with undeveloped brains, to take on monumental amounts of debt and promising them that the education they will receive will result in them earning much more money than they would otherwise, and they'll be able to repay this debt. But without being able to make that calculus well and being ushered into this system by what they assume are well-meaning, authority or parental figures, they come out the other side saddled with debt, not being paid near what they were promised, sometimes not even being able to find gainful employment at all. And now they're stuck with this debt. And they're the ones that were supposed to have made the calculus early on about how much they would be able to pay back. Like the entire, job market is something that individual has direct control of.
All right, so real quick, just an important piece of information. Open Secrets actually found out something very fascinating. So Biden, being the former senator of Delaware, actually had a lot of close relationships with a lot of the large financial institutions and credit card companies that are there, most notably Delaware Incorporated MBNA, which was bought by Bank of America in 1999. Now, in 2003 to 2008, that same organization gave Joe Biden $500,000 from credit card companies, financial services, and banks. So all those organizations in Delaware combined gave Biden from 2003 to 2008 $500,000, $500,000. That's ridiculous, and this just goes to show how out of touch. He even went on to say when MBNA was still around, he went on to say this: "I'm not the senator of MBNA, but from the amount of money that you're getting from them, or that you did get from them between the 2003 to 2008 time frame, it tells me this, that you were working at the behest of the top 1%. Hence, why we always say here at Hardlands Media, we got to get money out of politics."
Yeah, so just to go more on Paul's point, we're talking 18-year-olds that are signing a piece of paper right as they are legally able to sign something without a parent's signature. That will stick with them in some cases until after they die and have their kids pay it off because their Social Security check wasn't enough. And the amount of people that have student loan debt that don't even understand that, hey, your minimum payment actually will, in many cases, actually increase the amount you owe because of interest. The amount of people that aren't even aware of that. Okay, in context, 18 is an ideal age for the military because it's easier to shape people's minds since they, again, it's like, 7 years until they form? 25 is when the mind fully forms. On top of that, people that take out 6 figures, 7 figures of student loan debt can't buy a drink for 3 years. So we're saying that is a good way to do it. That is a good way to put a lifelong payment on people who haven't even begun to accrue wealth. Well, and then those same people say, hey, millennials, why aren't you buying cars? Why aren't you buying houses? Why aren't you going on vacations? Why aren't you spending money? Because, of course, our entire economy is built on the notion that it's consumer-driven. And without consumers, you can't drive it, so it stutters. And what do we get besides this? Well, you get people, like Paul said, that are promised that if they go to college, they will get a degree, but no one actually talks about what degrees are worth what. So if someone says, I really care about, not to pick on any one degree, but like, I don't know, like...
something in the humanities.
French art history.
Sure.
Unless you're teaching French art history, which I'm sure, because of the amount of people that get into it, that for jobs, is a very competitive field. And if your degree isn't, find a use for it, well, you're screwed, because what are you going to do? Because the other part of this is every job now, you want to be a busboy. Well, that's going to require a bachelor's degree. And the wages people are being paid because of the competitiveness of this market and the smallness of the economy and what we're trying to do. And Biden, back to Biden put this all in place, and
he was the number one cheerleader for it, Daniel.
He
was tout, like in the article from The Guardian, you can check out on our show notes, but he was the number one supporter of it. And he was a Democrat. He broke ranks. So in 2005, when this bill was going to get passed, him and 17 other Democrats decided to support this and support the credit card and loan industry and basically say, screw you to the middle class. That's what Joe Biden and his fellow 17 Democratic members who broke ranks to support this Republican-backed bill. I mean, this is what's crippling a lot of Americans. Student debt is going to devastate this economy. And the thing is, Biden now says he has a plan to fix it. You are responsible for it in the first place, and you're showing no remorse.
Yeah, no, on that, though, like, he literally said he has no empathy for young people in this situation. I mean, here's the thing. We get mad at, like, people who murder. We get mad at all these types of people that's all, poor on poor crime, let's call it. But when you have a politician, I mean, how many people commit suicide because their student loans are too high and they can't get out of it? How much of that can we actually put on Biden? I don't know what the number is. I know it's greater than zero and less than the number of people that kill themselves.
Yeah.
But it's so odd that in society in general, people in power that make laws for people who aren't in power can cause horrendous ramifications and still be looked at frontrunners by mainstream news who are there for the money.
All right.
So here's an interesting tidbit, right? So at the time Joe Biden went to university, if he had gone to a state school, the average tuition was something around $400 a semester.
Wow.
Right? Now, the cheapest state for state school is Iowa at around $12,000 a semester. The most expensive is Vermont at around $37,000 per semester. That's a drastic increase. And if you want to crunch the numbers, you will find that outpaces inflation by orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
What? Really?
Yeah. It's a nightmare. All right. So again, Biden trying to solve a problem that he created. I mean, come on. He's not the front runner. This guy is clearly a disaster.
And also, if we're going to go around and say it is a necessity in this modern job market that it is incumbent on any job seeker to have more than a high school diploma. You should have a 4-year college degree, some sort of vocational training of some sort. That is a necessity in our job market. Okay, if that's a requirement for our job market, why is that not a thing we're providing to our citizens?
Well, because, Paul, we got to support the military-industrial complex. And at least in Biden's case, he doesn't care about young people. So, I don't really believe that he has a true plan to fix America. So with that being said, it's time to get involved in this 2020 election cycle. We're now going to move on to another story. And Daniel, neoliberalism, the problem that's impacting all of us. What's going on?
Well, so to no one's surprise, as Paul is always keen to point out, there be a lot of riots and such happening all over the planet, and no one be talking about them. Do I have that about right, Paul?
Yep, that's my general sentiments.
Okay.
We will talk about more of them soon.
Okay, great. So this is a story on that. So Someone keeps knocking at the door. It's cold out there and getting colder, but people inside are cozy on the sofa with the TV on and the blanket on their laps. But there's that knock again. At the front window now, then the side door, then maybe the back. Maybe it's the wind. Now there's knocking at the windows, on the roof, and on the walls of the house. Who knew they were so thin? It's hard to understand. How could so many people be knocking all at once? But they are, and it's getting louder. Last week you could hear the banging in Colombia, in Bogota, Cali, Medellin. I can't pronounce a few of these, so I'm just going to go through them. A curfew declared, the army in the streets. And the weeks before that, in Iran, a steady beat that quickly spread to more than 100 cities. At least 100 protesters have been killed so far. It's hard to know if there were more or exactly what's going on. The government shut off the internet on the protesters' second day. But even when there's steady connection, it's hard to put it all together. Protests have been rolling through Algeria, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Egypt, France, Germany, Guinea, Haiti, Honduras, Hong Kong, India, Indonesia, Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, the Netherlands, Spain, Sudan, the UK, and Zimbabwe. I would add in the US, but that's just me. I'm sure I'm leaving someplace out, and that's only since September. Some have been fleeting, routine sort that snarls up traffic for a day. Other have been more like revolutions, big enough to topple governments, shut down entire nations. Someone is here, but what? And why now? In the last 12 weeks, protests have spanned 5 continents. So guys, the world's fine. Nothing's going wrong. Nothing's collapsing. The world order set in motion since World War II by the U.S. of unfettered free capitalism, of resource-rich countries being pilfered and having that sent to your developed nations, your Americas, your EU, your now China, growing India. It seems like the system that we have developed, not we, I should say, but has been developed that we live in, is failing us everywhere at the same time. And I don't hear about that from MSDNC, don't hear about it from CNN, don't hear about it from BBC. I don't hear about this ongoing and continuous roiling collapse or act of collapse, but it doesn't seem like the world is healthy. Guys, what do you think?
Well, okay. See, again, this goes to the problem what neoliberalism does. Neoliberalism only advances the top 1%. The banks, the corporations, Wall Street executives, those who have power, the political establishment, the corporate media establishment. Neoliberalism is holding people back. And at the end of the day, we as citizens are constantly chained up. And so here, I also got a super chat. Mad Wolf, thank you. If you piss Biden off, he'll tell you to vote for another. Yeah, that's probably true. And Biden is
definitely true. Yeah. We showed that video on the show.
We showed that video, and not to mention, just while we're talking about people like Biden, Biden is a neoliberal. He helped establish this neoliberal system. And the thing is, under neoliberalism, working class families all across the planet cannot advance because it only favors to those who already have power. And because of this, the rest of us are left cannibalizing the remnants, the crumbs that the establishment is giving us. And this is why there's so many protests. This is why people are upset with somebody like Biden or Hillary Clinton or even Trump, because this is an establishment system that only caters to the needs of the top 1%, all while ignoring our crumbling infrastructure, turning a blind eye to climate change, saying that we can't afford Medicare for all, saying that we cannot have affordable education. I mean, this is neoliberalism at its core. And the people who they have, they're little puppet masters in the Republican and Democratic establishment, continue to play this back and forth game saying like, oh, we have a better idea for America, or our version's a better idea for America. At the end of the day, they are all friends with each other. And again, seeing all these protests and people actually getting change to happen or actually stepping up tells me that we here in the United States need to step up our game as well, respectively. Paul.
So when we talk about protests that erupt globally, right, in foreign countries, one of the things that I am always thinking about is, okay, what are we hearing about these protests? Who is telling us these things? And what is it that they would like? And what would the U.S. government like the opinions of everyday citizens in America to be about any particular protest? And by my estimation, it's not hard to discern that. Which protests are being talked about more than others? In what light? What is the slant on it? What is the perspective being given? And I've mentioned on the show repeatedly, we don't hear a lot about the protest in Baghdad. We don't hear a lot about the protests that happen in Bolivia or in Lebanon, right? You know what we do hear about? We hear about Hong Kong, hear about those Hong Kong protests a lot. And I think even from very, very early on, I remember going, okay, I don't know what it is, but something smells fishy about this. Man, this kind of like very Western-centric philosophy, right? This sort of pro-democracy, self-determination, no taxation without representation type, protest is so ubiquitous. But then you look at the inciting offense of it being like kind of wonky and minutia laden. And you're like, how is it that there's such wide support for this? And why is it that it's the only one that we want to talk about on the mainstream news? And my point is, maybe in retrospect, people will say, yes, this appears to have been a nefarious thing, that the United States was trying to get in on this. So it's something like the Hong Kong Democracy Act of 2019 that passed in the House and Senate. I think there were 2 different acts along those lines that essentially are like, we stand with the people of Hong Kong and we're pro-democracy and they should have self-determination. And the way that we want to show that legally is by making sure that Hong Kong is acquiescent to the United States' geopolitical demands, i.e. they obey our sanctions, right? We definitely don't want them, trading with Iran or with Venezuela. We definitely want to make sure that, like, they end up not, getting cheap, not tariffed devices coming out of China that they can sell onto different markets. That's not a thing we want. We want to make sure that our trade policies are what's upheld, because that's the thing that will really bring democracy and self-determination to the people of Hong Kong. So that's a weird one. And my point of, like, it is important what the American citizens actually think. They don't want people like Medea Benjamin, right, jumping up on stage and saying, the world wants us to stay in the Iran nuclear deal. This is important. We should not be allies with Saudi Arabia. She's just an absolute hero when it comes to activism in a sort of pro-peace, anti-war stance. And the United States government does not like that. And the more you can shape the opinions of people in the United States, the more people will acquiesce when we determine that, hey, that government leader that we've been telling you repeatedly over and over again is a dictator and you should hate him. We want to go bomb there now. You guys okay with that? Cool. Nobody's objecting to the fact that we're going to go bomb the guy that we've been telling you for years is a dictator and is evil, and you need to believe that he's evil, because if you don't believe he's evil, you're not going to be so cool when I go, hey, I want to go bomb this guy. And why would we do that? You end up with more Medea Benjamins. You end up with more people who occupy the embassy in Venezuela and say, no, you are not allowed to give this to, someone who has declared themselves president and is actively trying to commit a coup.
Yeah. And see, again, it leads us to endless wars. And time again, we're seeing this crisis happen, and we got to make it stop, man. So... yeah. All right, now moving on to another story. Let's get back to the wide shot. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is a Tulsi time.
All right. Let me get that set up.
Oh, he didn't have the Tulsi up.
No.
Where's the Tulsi? It's coming.
Wait, which story are we on?
Number 4.
Okay, yeah. No, I'm on. Don't ignore me, everyone. I'll be up with everyone eventually.
We are live, folks. We
Very
are
much.
live
There we
here at
go.
Hardlens Media. So don't worry about
Are we
it.
circling back to that one?
Oh, wait. Ooh, I'm sorry. Wait, wrong.
We can do 4 first and come
No.
back to this?
No.
See, I knew I caught something.
I know,
Guys,
yeah.
you're seeing us figure out what we're doing in real
Sorry,
time.
the monitor caught me off guard.
No, let's do this one, because it
Yeah,
is
yeah,
actually...
yeah.
You know what? If you waited for Tulsi time, I'm sorry. We're going to have to blue balls
Yeah.
you. Paul.
Yeah. sorry.
it's coming. It's coming soon.
It's
We're-
next.
All right.
It's
All
next.
right.
Let's keep on this train of international protests. And how does the U.S. government get involved? Should the U.S. government get involved? And what should we think about what's going on? So let's talk a little bit specifically about Lebanon this time. So the protests in Lebanon started in October, so they're still relatively fresh. Lebanon has a really complicated recent history, right? You've got, They liberated the southern part of the country from Israeli occupation just in 2000. There's continuing wars that, aggression as recently as 2006. Their political system is complicated and is made up of some large voting blocks of parties, right? It isn't a two-party system in the way that the United States is. Ultimately, very similar to, I think, the Yellow Vest protests in France, the origins of this protest were extremely regressive tax policies that hit regular working class Lebanese the hardest, and they came out and they protested, and it was a pretty wide swath of folks that were not necessarily ideologically or philosophically aligned, right? So this is more a reaction to, hey, we don't have consistent electrical services in our country. We don't have a system that is providing for the people, and we are being regressively taxed. It's very neoliberal policies that ultimately are forced upon the country because of an economic downturn that was in large part due to forest fires that had happened years ago. And so the international community, through soft power arms, have effectively forced a lot of sort of austerity policies on Lebanon. That's not to say that the Lebanese political system is not also rife with various allegiances and people pulling in all kinds of directions. So you've got parties that have allegiances with Saudi Arabia. You've got parties that have allegiances with Palestine, right? So Hezbollah has been the largest vote-getting block of parties, and that's the kind of thing that rubs the U.S. the wrong way. So it isn't clear or certain at this point to what extent or how effective the United States will be in swaying this particular political protest movement, but the United States has a very strong track record of doing that, and they appear to be in the beginning phases of trying to co-opt this movement. So we're seeing activities from the National Endowment for Democracy, U.S. Institute for Peace, and USAID, which all sound like very nice organizations, but are all regime change think tanks that are based here in the United States and seek to serve the United States backing. There is a lot of complex history here. This is a really excellent article from the Gray Zone. I urge you to read it. I do not have time to go into all of the finer points, but what you will find is if and when this begins getting reported by mainstream press, my gut feel is that it will be presented in very simplistic and disingenuous fashion to say, we need to support these specific protesters because it's going to bring about democracy, and what we mean by that is we're going to get the best deal on things like natural resources, and we'll end up with an acquiescent government. So the article concludes by saying, it remains to be seen whether the protests can be co-opted and redirected towards U.S.-centric regime change goals, but for now they remain focused on the economy, and the atmosphere is growing more tense by the day.
So again, this goes on to another thing that sounds very shockingly familiar, and that is, the crisis that happened in Syria when the United States was favoring one rebel group over another rebel group. And again, it's nuts to think that this is even happening here, especially in this day and age. And, seeing what's happening in Lebanon, I wouldn't be surprised if sooner or later the United States does decide to get involved. Mm-hmm. And they start favoring one faction over another. And, the more involvement the more of our involvement in these countries and in their sovereign affairs, the more I get sick and tired of just hearing like, we're there to preserve freedom, we're there to preserve democracy or introduce democracy. Yet, at the same time, if any foreign power was doing this to us, people would be foaming at the mouth, demanding some retribution for stopping this involvement of another superpower getting involved in our foreign affairs, getting involved in our national affairs. We wouldn't like that if China decided to favor, Nancy Pelosi over Donald Trump. You're interfering in a democratic election, all the while ignoring primary candidates. That's a hypothetical scenario, but nonetheless, no one would like that scenario at all. And so I'm just disgusted by the fact that here we are, we're seeing something happening again, and the United States is somehow in the background trying to get involved. Daniel.
Well, I think everything that needed to be said was said. I would just add that in this era, China is kind of winning in terms of their pitch compared to the U.S. pitch. The U.S. pitch is, we're going to install someone that we like and they're going to control your country as a dictator, or we're going to co-opt a movement that's rising against you, give them weapons, have them take over your government, and then co-opt your government by having someone within that movement be head of the country. Whereas China's like, hey, I hear you want some infrastructure. How about I give you all that infrastructure up front and you give me your minerals? Whereas the U.S. is like, I'll do all those things I just said and then you'll also give me your minerals. So we're in an era that as these things are happening, this is also a time where China, again, Iraq just signed off on this, China is going to win these battles because they have a better playbook.
Yeah.
And the knee-jerk, like, oh, well, it's China reaction that a lot of people will have.
Or
because
even if it's Russia with their
they're
relationship with
communist,
Syria,
how
you know?
dare you support them? And it's like, really, this country is like, hey, looks like you could use some better roads. You know, we've got some pretty nice road building techniques that we've been employing over the last few years. We've really done a lot of infrastructure spending in these African countries. If you'd like, we can help you with these roads and infrastructure. And we can even do these other things. In return, you know, it would be cool is if like we could trade with each other. You know, like we could sell you stuff, and then like you could sell us stuff. Like,
Paul, that
what do you
sounds like
think?
a perfect deal, man. But
Those horrible communists are just trying to set the world on fire by building roads for people and offering trade.
Paul, I gotta ask you this in a little side comment, a little something different. But did you finish watching season 2 of Jack Ryan?
It's a slog, man. We'll get there.
Trust me on it. You're gonna be surprised with how it all ends. It's a bad nightmare, and which again goes on to the bigger point that Daniel and Paul and myself we like to make. Infrastructure will gain more ground. Infrastructure what helps move societies forward. Bombing societies to a backward stagnation or supporting dictators only causes more civil unrest. And sooner or later, the United States actions and what we do to our neighbors across the world will someday come back to haunt us. And
Let me say this, that
go
it
ahead.
used to be, and the caricature was that America would go in and help build a country up, and those dirty communists would blow the country up. In the modern era, America blows your country up, and those dirty communists build it up. So
things are
world's
backwards.
interesting.
But now let's go into a wide shot, because now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is. What's this time?
There we go.
Wait, here we go. There we
Surfing
go.
Tulsi.
Tulsi, surfing.
And
Oh my God. Oh my God. I love our graphics. I love that we have this stuff here. And you guys are making it happen. So why is it Tulsi time? Well, some time ago, this was brought to my attention, but there was a December Democratic debate qualification story that was done on MSDNC. Al Sharpton was the host of the show, and the video is somewhere on YouTube as it stands right now, but at the 19:35 mark, 19 minutes, 35 seconds in, you will see an interesting picture brought up. Well, you see the people who've qualified to be on a debate stage so far. Former Vice President Joe Biden, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, somehow Kamala Harris, even though her campaign is shutting down, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator Bernie Sanders, and Senator Elizabeth Warren. Those that need to meet one requirement, Tom Steyer, the man who bought his way onto the stage, business entrepreneur Andrew Yang. Now take a wild guess who's missing. It's this wonderful congresswoman. You guys might have heard of her. Her name is Tulsi Gabbard. Is missing. Now she qualified in the donors, and she qualified in 3 other existing polls. Representative Tulsi Gabbard is dealing with the same situation that is impacting Senator Bernie Sanders and Andrew Yang, even though both of them are on this poll right now. There is a
Kit,
clear.
Don't you mean John Yang? This is MSDNC we're talking
Yeah,
about.
that is
Right.
true. That is very true. But there is a media blackout now, apparently, on Tulsi Gabbard, or at least not on her being in this primary race, but at least not showing her qualifying in the polls or at least meeting majority of the requirements to be on the debate stage. Tulsi Gabbard is basically being ignored by the corporate media in regards to her accomplishments so far to qualifying for the 6th Democratic debate that will be in December. So she would have qualified at least last week were it not for this incident that also took place. And we talked about it on last week's show, but I think it's very important we bring it up again. Tulsi Gabbard actually actually got 6% in a poll from the Boston Globe Suffolk University survey. In that, she did very well, but for some reason, the DNC establishment decided to throw it away and not acknowledge it. Now, I just want to give you guys a quick reminder, the Boston Globe is also owned by the New York Times. So that's a little bit of a fascinating situation that we are seeing here with a major media organization like the New York Times also owning the Boston Globe. Mind you, this is the same New York Times that did a horrible smear piece on Tulsi Gabbard's pantsuit, and also, once again, tried to edit what Clinton said in regards to Tulsi Gabbard being groomed by the Russians, and then in turn silently turning Russians to Republicans.
At least we can say that the DNC believes that the New York Times is also trash as well as its affiliates. So,
yeah.
I mean, I guess that's what we got.
But there is a comment from the Tulsi Gabbard campaign. It goes on to say this. Again, this is another example of the DNC being arbitrary and inconsistent. New Hampshire is the first in the national presidential primary, but the DNC has shown its voters the respect they deserve, Tulsi Gabbard said in a release. So, I mean, has not shown, but the DNC has not shown its voters the respect they deserve, and that was a statement from Tulsi Gabbard. So again, I mean, look, this is a situation that we are concerned about, especially with the DNC establishment committing any kind of election fraud like they did in 2016. It's very clear that the DNC has is targeting basically progressives and independents that want to bring in political reform and change. Look, the DNC has problems with Bernie Sanders. The DNC has problems with Tulsi Gabbard, and they also have some clear problems with Andrew Yang. Let's not also forget that the corporate media and DNC establishment are also ignoring congressional candidates running for the United States Senate and House. I mean, we've interviewed a lot of congressional candidates, especially those running for the House, how the DCCC is basically supporting the incumbents, all the while ignoring the progressives and independents. And the same thing is happening to new challengers who are challenging Democratic incumbents in the United States Senate. So this Tulsi media blackout is a real thing. And the main reason is, okay, they're going to keep on doing smear articles on her, of course. They're constantly going to call her an Assad apologist and a Russian asset, but they will never show...
Don't forget a Modi asset. Don't forget insert other weird asset terminology here.
But there's another issue, too. When it comes down to showing good news about Tulsi Gabbard, especially how she is basically one poll away from being on the 6th Democratic debate stage in December, they will not show that. And MSDNC is showing its true colors. And, you know, let's not be surprised if we see more articles like this, or if Tulsi Gabbard qualifies in another poll, seeing the DNC slowly say, well, wait, that poll doesn't really count at all. Because they want to silence her. Look at what she's done to Pete Buttigieg. Look at what she's done to Kamala Harris. I mean, these were two, quote-unquote, front-runner candidates, and their campaigns are, you know, starting to fall down. Paul, Daniel.
I think it's... you say don't be surprised when this happens again. I'm not surprised now.
Yeah.
Like, they just keep doing this over and over again. And you hear, I hear it when I talk to people about, well, who do you like in the race? Who do you find interesting? You know, and if I ever say, you know, I'm still keeping my eye on Tulsi Gabbard, almost ubiquitously the comment is, well, she's never going to win.
Or she's a Russian asset.
Right. Or just pure
or she'll
dismissal.
Run third party.
Right. I'm like, in a conversation where you just said you're still keeping an eye on Kamala Harris, you're dismissing Tulsi? Really? Really?
All right, and also we got a super chat. Lori, $5. If we don't deal with this corruption, we'll never get nice things. Sadly, Lori, we've never gotten nice things because this corruption has been going on for decades. But yet when progressive or independent candidates, let's say like Senator Bernie Sanders or Representative Tulsi Gabbard or Andrew Yang, when they decide to bring up the corruption, they are silenced by the corporate media, or the DNC establishment says, well, they're not real Democrats, or they're not really part of our values. See, the problem is right now is that the establishment and corporate media are controlling the narrative, and it's our job, our responsibility as citizens, especially us here being independent media, to inform people and make them and have all of you realize that the power is always in your hands. See, look, the DNC is scared of progressives and independents. They are a paper tiger surrounded by a paper wall. All it requires all of us to do is collectively get together and push that system down. It can be done. It should be done. And this is why now more than ever, all of you need to know the rules and regulations in your state's primary so that you guys are prepared for any kind of, well, shady deals that the DNC will probably do to commit election fraud. They did it in 2016. They're probably going to do the same kind of twisted game again in 2020, but now we have to get involved. Also, another super chat. Unknown Space Pioneer. Isn't Tulsi a member of the Ministry of Silly Walks?
You don't get the reference? It's a great reference. It's a great.
Come on, Monty Python.
Oh my God. Sorry, my brain isn't always there right now, guys. I've been working on a lot of projects this entire past weekend. So there we go. I screwed that up. Ha.
So I'll just say on this that
Thank you for the super chat.
Is anyone really surprised by this? I mean, I think the real surprise, maybe you guys agree with me on this, is that people still treat MSNBC,
MSDNC,
MSNBC, NBC, Comcast as a news company. That's what really surprises me, that they can act this way repeatedly and people just don't get it. I mean, I understand why. There's many people that were conditioned since birth, or they watched Walter Cronkite and they believe the big box of people with the nice suits and everything.
Well, at one point they were legit.
At one point were legit. They've been indoctrinated into thinking that. They've grown up all their life watching television, which is ironic because they tell us, like, hey, get off your phones. I mean, not everyone. You know, the people that do are the same people that would laugh at people watching radio when they were kids, or listening to radio, I should say, not watching. That takes a lot of drugs to watch radio. But we're at a time where this is the act of a news channel, I say that with the largest quotes I could think of, that's losing power. If they had their way and they had this lockdown, they wouldn't feel a thing. They wouldn't worry about whether or not Tulsi Gabbard is on this or that. It only means something when they think it'll make a difference because they think the difference needs to be made. So here we have MSDNC and all these other stations showing their hand, showing the little control that they have. Because again, if they had that control, they wouldn't need to do this, and they would just look like fools. This is the act of someone that doesn't care if they look like a fool, doesn't care if they throw away long-term trust. Yeah. These are the same people that Russiagate was a big thing, and Rachel Maddow, who's paid $30,000 a day, ran that day after day after day. This is a propaganda rag. This is exactly what we accuse China and Russia of having, whereas, let's go in all reality, RT is much more reasonable as a state news agency than MSD and DNC could ever be.
All right, so I just want to make things very clear. First, when it comes down to the Bernie blackout, it's real. When it comes down to the Andrew Yang blackout, yeah, it's real. And same thing for the Tulsi Gabbard media blackout. It is real. They are trying to silence them. Any kind of good news, any kind of news showing them actually having large crowds or getting a huge support from different people, from different political spectrums all across the United States, corporate media will silence it because it is in their interest to serve the establishment so that they can still have access to the neoliberal establishment in the Democrats and in the Republican Party. So, I mean, this is a problem that we're seeing. And, you know, now more than ever, we have to get involved in this election cycle because this is going to continue to go on. And this is why we need independent media. So with that being said, you know, Tulsi Gabbard has a mountain to climb, but so do all other progressives that are in this race. Bernie Sanders, Andrew Yang, even the candidates that are running in congressional races. The DCCC has already made it clear that they're going to support the incumbents. Progressives, independents, and voters need to step up their game and get involved because you will not have any support from the establishment, and corporate media will only smear progressives at any chance, at any opportunity that's given to them. Also, Paul.
They rigged it against Bernie last time. I mean, anyone who's been paying attention and is honest about it can admit that it was the scales were being tipped, and they're trying to do it now. And for as much as we say this isn't on the up and up, this isn't good, you shouldn't do this, what we're going to find out after the fact is it was worse all along. Like, that's what we're going to find out is what we don't even know is going on right now to try and sway the electorate or to try and rig the elections themselves or whatever. Like, there's going to be even more shady shit that comes out in the wake of these primaries. That said, I do think the electorate is trending so hard in a left populist direction that eventually, maybe not this time around, but eventually that wave is so large that no amount of rigging can make it appear as though it isn't there. No amount of narrative shaping can convince everyone that the thing that they want, they don't actually want.
And there's that wave, and there's that paper tiger, and there's that paper wall. And I think I'll just end this segment with, it's crazy. Tulsi's been on Joe Rogan 3 times, and I keep hearing this, and I think it's always true every time. It's a real shame to talk about the news media when a comedian who does cage fighting in his spare time is credited as, hey, that guy does really good interviews on Tulsi Gabbard or anyone comparatively. That we live in a time where, I mean, Joe Rogan's phenomenal, don't get me wrong, but we live in a time where the news media doesn't even hold a candle to a cage fighting commenter.
Ready for a quick factoid before we end this segment?
Go for it.
I think I'll end. This will be the final note for the Tulsi Gabbard story. 2.7 million views so far in 6 days for her recent interview on Joe Rogan's show. That's from Silver Surfer. Thank you so much for that live stream comment. Thank you for that factoid, because you know what? I think we need to show everyone that, yeah, when you actually hear a candidate speak her policies, people will listen, no matter what their political points of view are. And Tulsi Gabbard has what it takes to build a coalition. Bernie Sanders has what it takes to build a coalition. And corporate media under neoliberal candidates cannot. And that's that. So now, moving on to another story. Daniel, Pete Buttigieg just made a dumb statement.
Oh, yeah.
That's never happened before.
Never.
Literally the first time, everyone.
First time ever.
Breaking news,
Breaking
everyone.
news. Yeah, Pete Buttigieg said something really stupid, and I really want to slap him upside the head for this one.
Okay. Do we have any? Let me see if we have.
We do, actually. Yeah, we do.
There we go. This guy.
Yeah, that
Hello,
guy. Pete
that
Buttigieg,
guy.
the apparently new front runner of the Democratic Party.
Hey, he's in a strong fourth kit. You should respect him and not use that condescending tone.
I mean, come on. He's getting nothing but fluff pieces written about him. Like, he's perfect. I mean, ugh. Anyways,
Okay.
take it away, dude.
So let's get into it. So South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who we were just mentioning a second ago, said Sunday during a campaign stop in North Carolina, which of course he's doing very, very well in, that he had wrongly assumed in the past that desegregation had been successful in his county schools, something that he just assumed and never checked in on, just like those people whose houses that were not vacant that he thought were and bulldozed them. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Buttigieg, one of the top-tier candidates vying for the Democratic nomination, said at the Greenleaf Christian Church in Goldsboro, said he was previously under the, quote, illusion that public schools in St. Joseph County were largely integrated before learning that most minority students in the county were confined to at least one school district, South Bend's Community School District. When I was mayor of that small town that one time, I mean, I didn't know anything. I mean, I knew everything. I mean, I didn't. I don't know what answer is right. I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. Yeah, so I have to confess that I was slow to realize. He probably winked about that big. I'm just trying to get the emphasis in there for you guys. I worked for years under the illusion for years. He didn't know where kids were going to school for years. Anyway, under the illusion that our schools in my city, I own the city, Pete Buttigieg, but I don't know what's in the city, my city, were integrated. But when I slowly realized, if you looked at the county, almost all the diversity of our youth was in a single school district, he said, in an interview with Reverend William Barber III, a prominent civil rights activist. Now, Buttigieg is doing, I think, what they call a 0% support with African Americans, and I think he's one of the only candidates that also has I think it's a 0% support with Latinos. You know, the perfect person to run a general election, which is a multiracial coalition of, not Pete Buttigieg.
There's a candidate that's coming to mind. The Democratic Party is saying he's not a front runner. He's been consistent for 40 years. He's the guy that has a coalition, but his name is skipping my mind for a moment. Guys?
Bernie Sanders, something
Paul,
like that?
wait, your brain is still functioning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you guys always do this like you don't know who you're talking about thing.
Hey, I'm reading a story. It's lowering my IQ. I have to convey that to the audience who understands it and is in the same boat. I mean, I'm watching chat. No one knows how to type when I do these stories. Because everyone just like you is just like, because let's be real. He knows that that's horseshit. He knows that that's not true, but it sounded good because at some point he had to say that he's doing a good job as mayor and saying something that I don't know, only poor black people are going to contest is something that usually, through the majority of American history, is something that's very easy to get away with. Instead, Pete Buttigieg is here a day late and a dollar short with a terrible city governance. I mean, he's literally a mayor of a small town who, I will remind everyone again, thought Bernie Sanders was the best guy ever until he got in, because as we know, he's consistent in every way, shape, or form, and money doesn't affect anything. Even though he has more billionaires going for him than anyone else, he destroyed people's livelihoods in Indiana, and he's trying to get around it. And to Paul's point, people notice. MSDNC can say all they want that he's a front runner. They can say everything that they want to say about him. But people are seeing through and realizing, because they keep giving away their reputation.
Yeah.
And now they're like, oh my God, people don't believe me. And Pete Buttigieg is trying so hard to shore up support that he's never going to get. And he's at a dead end. He's going to do poor in Iowa. He's going to take third place or fourth place in Iowa, whatever Joe Biden is.
But he's a strong front runner, Paul. Daniel.
See, everyone's losing their IQ with this story. I've said it. I called it. You heard me prophesize it, and it's come to pass. And then he's going to go to New Hampshire. He's going to take third or fourth place there. Maybe fifth place. Maybe fifth place in Iowa. Then he's going to go to Nevada, and everyone's going to be like, who's he? I hate him already. Look at that smug face. He said bad things about Nana. And then he's going to go to Carolina, and then the same exact thing's going to happen. Then everyone is going to go, why is he in the race? And either him or Biden at some point, hopefully Biden after New Hampshire for that bet, Buttigieg whenever is going to drop out. He's going to give his money to someone because he's not a real contender.
Yeah. All right. Now we're moving on to our final story now. Paul, this has to deal with ICE, and what the hell did it do?
Yeah, so we kind of missed reporting this when it first came out a few days ago, but it's fascinating. So ICE, right, the duplicate law enforcement agency that does the same thing in a more fascistic way that Customs and Border Patrol does, decided that they were going to set up a sting operation to catch undocumented immigrants. So people who have immigrated into the United States under a student visa that are overstaying their visa. So the way that they went about doing this was via a sting operation. They set up a fake university.
Wait, was it by chance called Trump University? Or did they
Could
just
have been. It was in Michigan. I thought that was interesting.
it's the DeVos University. I understand. Keep going.
University of DeVos. Yeah, so they set up this university and, are targeting, kids who had come over on like a student visa, had overstayed that visa, and are looking for ways of staying in the United States. And so they're trying to get them enrolled into this. Well, there was a non-zero, so they arrested 250 foreign students at this university that was fake, and so it basically was for overstaying their visa. But what they didn't account for was, in their clumsiness in doing this, because it was an actual university, or it appeared to be real, that actually took tuition, and actually, on paper, bureaucratically, what happened was there were some students, predominantly from Pakistan, is what I had read. It's not in this article, but I'd read it in a different one. But foreign students had applied to, were accepted to this university, then went through the trouble of contacting the State Department and getting visas to go to this not real university, have valid student visas, come to the U.S. to find that this university is fake and that they've been defrauded, and are now under arrest because the ICE is now claiming that the student visas that they have aren't valid because the person should have known that this university was fake and fraudulent.
Give him a can of SpaghettiOs.
Like, what? Now, I imagine what happened is they set up this whole fake university thing or whatever, and bureaucratically someone who's unaware of this sting operation goes, oh, I guess this is a university that this kid got accepted to, and that's the thing that we issue student visas for, so here's your visa. But even then, even if they didn't grant the visa, now you've got this situation where maybe somebody's coming over going, maybe the visa process, I have to go in person or something, I don't know. And maybe they come over on just a travel visa to try and figure it out. Are you going to arrest them then? I don't know. It's a stupid sting operation that they messed up 6 ways from Sunday. And they've got egg on their face. And I'm going to laugh at them because these guys are basically just thugs, right? They're a bunch of thuggish guys that get off on kicking people out of the country, and they've done it so silly, such a clumsy way that they have made themselves look very, very stupid.
Mind
No
you,
one fears the Inquisition.
Yeah. A Monty Python reference. Now that I do know, okay? I'm sorry about not missing the first one. Don't worry, I promise it won't fly over my head. I've been working on a lot of projects
By
this
the way,
past
that
weekend.
wasn't a Monty Python reference.
No.
That was more for you.
No, that was the Spanish
I
Inquisition.
know. Okay, never mind. We're going
I know, you're talking about 40K. I know, the Imperial Inquisition. The Emperor's... Excuse me, I heard that sign in the background, sir. Don't you ever insult the Imperial Inquisition. So there we go. So nonetheless, folks, this kind of goes on to a bigger story that we talk about, and that is, ICE is going after people that are innocent. They're going to school to better themselves. Why do we want to remove people that are trying to improve themselves and get a better education and thus contribute into our society? I mean, they are they're going to school for enlightenment and to improve their career paths, their career options. What threat are they? ICE is once again showing why ICE is proving to everyone why we don't need it.
So I just want to ask people in the comments, simple question. What school was more competently set up? This school that ICE set up or the South Harmon Institute of Technology?
University of Farmington is what it's called.
University of Farmington, hit 1. South Harmon Institute of Technology,
Also,
which we can abbreviate as SHIT, hit 2.
Also, real quick, too, because Fred Edward mentioned in the live stream chat that this school was set up under Obama, too.
But Obama did nothing wrong, Kit.
Yeah, so it was set up in 2015.
2015.
So that would have been during
Obama.
Obama's presidency.
Wow.
Hey, Kit, why don't you tell us what Obama was thinking when he put this together?
No, I don't want to talk about it. No, he's not here right now.
Fair enough.
No, fair enough. Not to mention, too, real quick, we will be going on a short break. We will be interviewing a congressional candidate who's running in the California 4th District. He is an independent, Robert Lawton, so please stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. But if you want to help out Hard Lens Media, please consider being a Patreon supporter. Your support helps us keep the lights on in this studio so we can get better video gear, better audio gear, so that we can make more consistent quality content for all of you guys, our viewers and subscribers. Now, also, YouTube is making a lot of changes, and it's unsubscribing people. So what you guys need to do is double check and triple check that you're subscribed, hit that ring bell notification. But just know this, we have a way around it in case you are unsubscribed, but resubscribed if that happens. Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time is when we go live. And more importantly, for our Patreon supporters, you help keep the studio afloat. And we cannot thank you guys enough. And one of the perks in being a Patreon supporter is that we read your name. So, Dan, this list is getting longer, buddy.
Kit, you're going to have to read it.
I know. Well, when it becomes to 1,000, we'll figure out a way around
I'll consider it at 1,000.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. You guys are killing me. But I do it for you guys because you guys, I'm humbled by your support. So, shout out to Myra Hernandez Sanchez, Ishmael Rufus, Carlos Rosero, Alan Marone, Pian Timpson, Judy Monroe, Gregory Church, Kieran McCown, Cassie Lloyd, Unknown Space Pioneer, Lawrence Johnson, Michael, Midwest Toker, Chase, Sandra and Grayson, NC Shafter, Anthony Nelson, Teresa Collins, Brittany Cabrera, Desmond Turek, Jack Moore, Sandra Mayer, Giffy, Lewis, Ariana Hinson, Michael Ealing, Emily, Eric Unger, Freethinker 59, Todd Adams, Ramon Lazo, Carrie Barber, Alexis Haas, Aaron Steinwolf, Lucy Grever Conroy, Ofri Edward Ohms, Mike Concho, and Jurek, Dennis McCartney, Lance Vera, Mark Lloyd Baker, Mike Terminite, Roy Hartley, Tina Krauts, Cherry Tyler, Michael Hillett, Sally, Tiffany Lee, Ashwin Rukumar, Willard Demooney, Dick Newell, Anthony D'Angelo, Rena Q, Jeff, Fred Edward, Akbash Shakita, Maya Jones, Julie, Melissa Sharowski, Kate, Jeff Green, Susan Singer, Deanne, Savutet, Kai Arnold, Brian Thomas, Dimitri and Carl Asper, Jack Papura, Tony Watches Closely, Burns Lawler, Chrome Magnograms, Jimmy Coutura, John Sodurla, Christine McMasters, Freebird 1969, Gumdrops, JH, Jack McAfee, Jose Manuel, Nancy Kreutz, and special shout out to Wesley Wiles, who's been introducing us to a lot of congressional candidates. Please stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. We're going to take a short break. We got a very special interview coming up very soon. Up. Hi, Cassie Lloyd. We just saw your super chat. Thank you so much. That really helps us out. Really, all you guys, our viewers, our subscribers, people who donate to super chat, people who have become Patreon supporters, you're making this channel happen. Please don't go anywhere. We're just trying to get our guests online so we can do this interview. Please stay tuned. Going to take a short break. Check out the trains. Hey everyone, this is Kit Cabello with Hard Lens Media. We are doing our continued coverage of congressional candidates that are running in this 2020 election cycle. Now, we all know that there's the big presidential race, but it's very important to note that the office of presidency can only do so much, and in order for there to be real change, we got to take back the Congress as well, the United States Congress, from the Senate to the House seats. And now more than ever, we got to support progressives and independents, and the DCCC, the DNC establishment, has made it very clear that they're going to stop progressives and independents and alternative parties from being, bring in that much needed change. And joining me here today is none other than Robert Lawton. He's running in the 4th California Congressional District, and you're running as an independent. So Robert, for our viewers and subscribers, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and as an independent candidate, what kind of challenges you are dealing with?
Sure, happy to. And regarding the last part of that question, gosh, I could talk about this all day. And the short version, let me give you some background about myself first. I'm from New York originally. I was born and raised in New York. I moved out to Los Angeles at the end of 2006. I was in the film business. And I was there for about 5 years living in LA, working in the film business. I'm also in the finance business. I spent about a decade or so on Wall Street prior to getting into the film business. And bottom line is, I got this dog, and I was living in the Valley. I was living in Woodland Hills in Los Angeles, and I'd grown up pretty much my whole life in New York City, most of my life, and I went to college there at NYU and so on. And point being, I was accustomed to living in a place where I shared walls with people, and people all around all the time. So I was living in this house in LA, and I got this dog, and I would take her to the dog park, and I was just like, man, I just want some land. I don't want to have to clean up dog shit. I don't want to have to put a leash on my dog, and you know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't want to have to worry about the neighbors, and I want to play the guitar or whatever it is. I don't want to hear them, and just the congestion and living in LA and all that kind of stuff. So this was the end sort of the financial crisis, and housing prices were still very depressed. This is 2011.
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking around just online, and for what's in the area, relatively speaking, where I can get a lot of bang for the buck. And I just sort of found this area up here, which is about 4 hours north of LA. I'm pretty much in the dead center of the state of California.
Okay.
And so I bought this house with 40 acres, and I've been here ever since. And the idea initially was to, spend time back and forth in LA, and I just basically have never left here ever since we got here.
All right. So now you're running as an independent, and you
True.
ran in the previous midterm 2018 election cycle as an independent as well.
No.
No, you. All
I
right.
ran
So
as a Dem.
okay. So all right. So what made you make that switch then
Sure.
from a Democrat from the 2018 midterm to running as an independent for this 2020 election cycle? And what kind of pushback have you been getting back in regards to making this decision? And what are the types of challenges that you're dealing with now?
Sure. Before I forget, one minor challenge that I'm dealing with in terms of raising money is Act Blue, for example. Act Blue is really easy to use. If you're a Democrat, you press a couple of buttons, boom, you're good to go. And also, when people donate money to just the Democratic Party or up and down the ticket or that kind of stuff, you'll get a piece of whatever somebody donates. But so running as an independent, I can't use that platform. But the broader answer is, I was expecting, I'll give you like a real short version of why I got into the race in 2018. So I'm not a politician at all. I never anticipated I would be one. I would characterize myself as a reluctant politician. And so briefly in the 2018 election, let me back up even further. What I saw happening, this is just my perspective, in the 2016 election, in my view, what happened was the DNC, the Democratic establishment, the powers that be, put their elbow on the scale to propel a shitty candidate through the primary system. They screwed over, and here we are with President Trump as a result of it. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of time before the primary, on Facebook and Twitter, and did whatever I could to try to make people aware of it. That this is a bad idea. This is not going to go well, and she's a weak candidate. And I remember driving around up here in 2016, and I would see this. You see Ford F-150 trucks, and this is a pretty red district. But I would see there's not a lot of love for the Democratic establishment here, particularly people like Hillary or Nancy Pelosi and that kind of stuff. In addition to which, I just didn't feel like. Let me just jump ahead for a second. So a week or two ago, they reauthorized the Patriot Act, I think it's called. Yeah, the Patriot Act, right? And the Dems capitulated on this, like this kind of stuff. Nancy Pelosi and
right.
Even whatever her name is, the Progressive Caucus and stuff. And that kind of stuff really bothers me. The sort of short answer is, I don't see the Democrats as the left and the Republicans as the right. I see the Democrats as centrists, essentially.
Okay. So now looking at this election cycle, I think a lot of reviewers want to know is who's the current incumbent of the 4th district in California, the Congressional district, and what are some of the issues impacting some of the constituents within that area in California?
Sure. So the current incumbent is a guy named Tom McClintock, who's probably going to be front and center this week because he's on the Judiciary Committee. He's a lifelong politician. I don't think he's ever held a regular job in his life. He's been our representative for the last 10 years. And I do air quotes because he doesn't even live here. Okay.
Could
He's
you
one
care
of
to
those-
llaborate on that?
Do I care to elaborate on the fact that he doesn't live here? Sure, happily.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a term called carpetbagger, which is doesn't really have the emphasis I think it should, but essentially it's I think it's from the Civil War, and what it simply means is, let me just give you the facts. He is ostensibly supposed to represent this district's interests in Washington, D.C. We can agree on that, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
He's our representative. But he doesn't even reside in this district. So he, period. So that's one thing. The second thing is he is in terms of where he stands on the issues and so on, he essentially is a Trump lackey. He votes with Trump's positions 96% of the time. He behaves in general when the cameras are on him like he's sort of auditioning for a job in the administration, essentially. I think that's really where but in terms of policy and so forth, he's a climate science denier and that kind of stuff. He's a pretty hardcore Republican Tea Party guy.
Right. And so right now, this district that is potentially up for grabs could potentially go to the Democrats or possibly an alternative party independent candidate and bring in some much needed change in the United States Congress. So I think it's very good right now that we actually talk about some of your policies and what you want to help introduce. So take, for example, you're talking about healthcare, and that's just something that we've talked about on the show time and time again. Medicare for all is becoming an important issue amongst the presidential candidates. And right now, 500,000 Americans, basically go into debt or go into bankruptcy because they can't pay these ridiculous hospital bills. So essentially, what is your plan in regards to dealing with Medicare for all, single-payer healthcare? What do you plan on introducing, and what kind of version of the plan do you support?
I support Bernie's version of Medicare for all, period. I think for a variety of reasons, among which are it's simple, it makes sense, it covers everybody, and I think the problem with it, frankly, is it's a framing issue, right? Like people see this as, oh, that's socialism, or it's got to. Unfortunately, some people including Bernie himself, have sort of stumbled on characterizing the plan, and the question is, are you going to raise taxes? And it's kind of a bogus question, because if you just want to look at it apples to apples, yeah, I mean, so middle class taxes will go up. However, net, whatever you pay annually in terms of healthcare and co-pays, insurance, drugs, and all the rest of that stuff will go down dramatically. So B, you don't have to ever worry that if you have either pre-existing conditions or if there's an emergency, or GoFundMe isn't the healthcare plan. Like,
right.
And it's bananas in my view that this country doesn't have universal healthcare.
Now let's talk about another issue, and this has to deal with the environment. You talk about wildfires, you talk about dealing with California waters, and also making sure that we have like a Green New Deal. So I think a lot of people are aware of course, the devastation that these California fires can bring upon. So especially onto major cities or small towns, people being evacuated en masse because of the clear threat that climate change, can do to the human species, and really how much of a danger it is to a lot of people who live in California. So essentially, what is your plan to really deal with the potential of further wildfires happening in the state of California, at the same time too making sure that a lot of Californians have clean drinking water? So let's address those two issues.
Sure. So I think first things first, in terms of sorry, my dogs are going nuts. Hey, give it a rest. Sorry.
That's fine.
So sorry. I think first things first, in terms of a broad answer to that, if you don't acknowledge or accept the fact that climate change is a real thing, like, get out of the way, right? So like that's the first issue, because it really affects everything else that you've asked about, right? Tom McClintock, the current incumbent, is a climate science denier. And there's one other person, essentially a challenger, that's my primary opponent, and she's a Democrat. She just flew in. She's called a parachute candidate. She never lived here before. She's backed by the Democratic powers that be. and she also doesn't support the Green New Deal, right? So first things first, you have to acknowledge that climate change is a real thing. With regard to wildfires and water and so on, I think PG&E is a real bears mentioning here. PG&E is, in my view, it's a monopoly, and it's a publicly traded company. I mean, it's owned essentially by investors. It's investor owned, and I think that's a mistake. I think it should be owned by the public. It's a utility. It's a monopoly. When I moved here, I had a choice of cable companies, telephone. I didn't have a choice of who my electric company was going to be. It's a de facto monopoly, and I think that what we have learned is they have spent a lot of money on lobbyists and the rest of it. Meanwhile, they've been ignoring infrastructure. So I think that should become a publicly owned utility, A. B, there's a really interesting movie that I think everybody should see, particularly everybody who lives in the state of California. It's called Water and Power, A California Heist. And there was this crazy, almost like backroom deal called the Monterey Amendment. It's really fascinating. So there's a couple called the Resnicks. They own most of the almond growers growing in the valley and in California, and they use a tremendous amount of water and so on. And they've essentially privatized California water. It's a long story, but bottom line is the Monterey amendments, which was a bogus deal, is still winding its way through the courts. Definitely needs to be addressed.
Right. And so now let's actually deal with one of the problems with independent candidates is that, there's a huge mountain basically stopping them from being on the ballot and even securing themselves to be on the debate stage. I mean, here in Illinois, we got the same problems, especially for Green Party, Libertarian Party, or any other alternative party that wants to, stand up against the Republicans or the Democrats. So essentially, have you secured yourself to be on the ballot and potentially debate against some of your rivals who will be vying for the 4th congressional seat?
Yeah, it's not as simple as that, although it really should be. So how it works here, this is something that I think a lot of people in California don't know this, but here's the sort of the landscape in California. We have the primary and we have the general, right? Most people know that. On March 3rd, in about 90 days, we have the primary, but it's an open primary. There's no Democratic primary and a Republican primary. No, it's open. Party preference doesn't matter. So independents can vote, NPPs, they call them here, no party preference, can vote for Republicans. Republicans can vote for Democrats. Doesn't matter. Party preference doesn't matter, A. And B, it's a top 2 or jungle primary. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
So basically you have something similar to a ranked choice voting then apparently over there?
Put simply, just to really dumb it down, what it simply means is it doesn't matter how many candidates there are or what their parties are in the primary. The only thing that matters is who gets the most votes and who gets the second most votes. And whoever that is, they go on and face each other in the general election. Okay. There's really no question that Tom McClintock is going to get the most votes. The only real question is who's going to face him in the general, who's going to get the second most votes in the primary. And it really boils down to between me, running as an independent, and Bryn Kennedy, this Democrat who just flew in. And my sense is, in all candor, she's not going to debate me. She's just trying to sort of ignore me. I guess that answers your question.
Okay. Now, more importantly, I think for our viewers and subscribers that want to learn more about your campaign, find you online on social media, where can they go?
Yeah, I think the hub for all of the answers to all of those questions is the website, which is lawtonforcongress.com. It's LAWTON, and then the number 4, Congress, or FOR, it doesn't matter. Okay. And you can get to my Twitter and my Facebook. And I hate Facebook so much, but because I'm running, I have to, participate. But really, Twitter is really where I spend a lot of my social media energy.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here at Heartlands Media. Robert Lawton, he's running for the 4th Congressional District in the state of California, running as an independent. Peace, everyone. Let's all do what we can to build a better future. And thank you again, Robert, for joining our show.
Thanks for having me.